will rally round the flag, boys will rally once again, shouting the battle cry of freedom, and we'll rally from the hillside, we'll gather from the plain, shouting the battle cry of freedom. The Union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah, down with the traitor and up with the stars, and we'll rally round the flag, boy, rally once again, shouting the battle cry of freedom.
So Chatham, where we are now, operated as a Union headquarters for soldiers during the Civil War. It's about 250 years old. It's a 180 feet long brick manor, and it was once visible from much of the town. Guests that have been here include George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln. So think about this, guys. You're a wealthy landowner in the 1860s. The Civil War breaks out. You have all this magnificent property behind me, all around me. Most of the work is done and maintained by slaves. And then the opposing army walks in and decides they're going to take over your property, and they're going to turn it into their own Union headquarters. And that's it. Your fortune becomes devastated. In fact, the Lacys never recovered, even though they were secessionists. There's not much you can do, even this far into the South, when an army that gets control of the area decides they're going to come in and take over. The grounds here are still very well maintained. So let's go take a look inside. So in this room here, President Abraham Lincoln was invited to a dinner party hosted by General Irving McDowell in 1862. Just south of here is the Rappahannock River, and that would have been controlled by the Confederacy. And at this time in 1862, the Union controlled the area north of the Rappahannock, so Lincoln would have been able to be here without much fear for his life. And the Union, of course, took over this place and controlled it. So guys, during the Civil War, Federal soldiers would scroll their names and their units' names on the walls here. And it's hard to see with the plexiglass, but there's a number 30 for maybe an infantry or cavalry. A number 1. Some of it is in cursive writing. And some of it's less legible. But they wanted to make their mark, and they wanted people to know where they were. Similar like today, we have people that tag the sides of buildings and railways, stations and bridges, underpasses. Why not just write on someone's wall in the middle of their living room? So here is a miniature model representation of Chatham, overlooking the Rappahannock. Soldiers, the Union soldiers, were firing from up here. Down, down, down this valley, across the river, the Rappahannock, and on to the other side. So during the Battle of Fredericksburg, Union General Ambrose Burnside ordered that pontoon boats be made to help ferry Union soldiers across the river to get them into the town to make an assault. Unfortunately for them, there were Confederate sharpshooters lined up in the buildings on the other side of the Rappahannock that were taking them out one by one. And so Burnside, when he couldn't get these pontoon boats like the one you see back there behind me, when he couldn't get those across, he decided to have the town bombarded. And with these cannons, you see, similar to the one behind me, This entire area on this cliffside was lined with Union cannons, and they bombarded the town of Fredericksburg with approximately 6,000 shells, causing massive damage and structural damage and loss of life. And the aftermath is pretty horrible when you see it in pictures from 1862. But that's where I'm standing right now. There are 3 structures that survived the shelling, and I'm going to show those to you. They are, from left to right, the courthouse, which was the Fredericksburg courthouse, St. George's Episcopal Church, and the Fredericksburg Baptist Church. So let's see if you can see those steeples. A smaller one right about here. That's the courthouse, the Episcopal Church, and the Baptist Church. So at 3 a.m. on December 11th, 1862, church bells began to toll in Fredericksburg as Union engineers, under cover of darkness, tried to complete these pontoon bridges. By 5 a.m., Confederate sharpshooters started to spot them and began a strategy of trying to pick them off one by one. It caused a retreat of the engineers, and as they backtracked, it was then that General Ambrose Burnside ordered the bombardment of the town, an 8-hour bombardment, and during that time they had to ferry Union soldiers into the town while they were also receiving counterfire. When the Lacys came back to their plantation after the Union had taken it over for their purposes during wartime, they found a bunch of grave markers similar to this. At least over 150 of them, of Union soldiers that had died and been brought back here. So very much like the Chandler plantation, where Stonewall Jackson met his demise and was used as a makeshift hospital for Confederate soldiers, Chatham had the same purpose for Union soldiers. Walt Whitman once came to the house during this time, along with Clara Barton and others, and one thing that he noted was that at a tree about 100 feet from the property, there were piles of amputated limbs and a few dead bodies. He said there were enough in this pile to fill an entire horse carriage. So that gives you at least an image into the sheer volume of deaths and misery that occupied this place during the time of the Civil War and the Battle of Fredericksburg. I think one of the hardest things about tours like these and trying to interact with historical sites is the process of cultivating a vivid imagination and trying to picture what it must have been like to have been here at the times in which these conflicts were taking place. It's very hard for me. It's hard to think that with all this beauty around me, I'm standing in a place where there was so much death, devastation, and destruction. And especially when you're traveling with kids or other people that may not be inclined to sites like these, you have to create that picture for them, especially kids. My 3 children are a prime example. To give them an appreciation for what they have, sometimes it's so important to revisit history and to look at these places, especially on this 4th of July weekend. To think about where we've come as a country and even where we're headed. The issues that people faced in the past are no different than the issues that we face. We live in complicated times, and they did too. Their moral compass, their sense of right and wrong, all of the issues continue to recycle themselves. and we're faced with very much the same decisions that our predecessors were. So, on that somber yet reflective note, thank you guys for traveling with Trey. I appreciate it. As always, I have things planned, people to see, places to go, things to do. Please like and subscribe. If there's anything on your list that you've seen, if you have thoughts about the places I've been, let me know in the comments section. I always appreciate your input. I'll see you next time.